Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rise Creating Your Voice Part 2. I am Judah Bernard, the wisdom dialoguer and the motivational warrior of the Rise Creating Your Voice podcast. As I stated before, I have back-to-back interviews going on and on. This is a special interview we have with Lo Alaman, the poet and author. You can reach him on Instagram at Lo the Poet. I'm gonna spell that for you guys. That's L as in lemon, O as in October, T as in Tom, H as in Harry, E as in Everett, P as in poet, O as in October, E as in Everett, and T as in Tom. And he is the author of We Sang A Dirge. May I introduce to some and present to others, Mr. Lo Alaman. Let's go.
Gang. What's up, family?
I am well. We are here. And when I saw that your book, you became an author and it just dropped, I wanted myself to be the first, get a one peek or a sneak peek of this actual book. So where is it?
All right, you go. You ready? It's coming on the screen. 3, 2. Oh, look at that.
Oh, there it is. Congratulations. Let's congratulate him in the comments. Let's congratulate him in subscribing. Let's go to his website, and you can go find him if you look up wesangadirge.com. That's all one word together. And actually get into this actual book. It is book of poems, laments, and other things that matter to God. Tell us a little bit about that, Lo.
Yeah, so you know this. We moved at the top of the pandemic, and we moved into a community that's like north of Houston. And so we just got to a new church, you know what I'm saying? We hadn't had a chance to like really meet people like talking about, and when all the different things that were happening, as far as like, you know, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, killing of Breonna Taylor, the killing of Floyd, and all the names that come after that, you're just like, man, you don't really know how to, like, we as a people, we feel this pain, and family, we talk about these things, but like I'm in a new space with a bunch of white folks I hadn't met before. So I was like, I don't know how much I can bring this to church. You know, I don't know how open I can be in my faith community about this stuff. And it was almost like I was waiting to have permission to say, oh, we can talk about this here. And it was interesting as I'm wrestling with it, praying about it, I'm writing. I ended up sharing a poem about just like, you know, I was sharing a poem on Pentecost Sunday about how we need the Holy Spirit. And how the Holy Spirit is the breath of God. And at the same time as we're praying for the breath of God, our whole community is crying, I can't breathe. And it's like, there's no way the church can't talk about how we need the breath of God and we're crying that we can't breathe. So I spit the poem. It comes out, you know, it does what it does in the service. But I started having conversations afterwards just with people who were saying like, yo, I needed to hear that today. Or I'm glad we're finally having this conversation, because I felt like this is important to God, but it didn't seem like if the church was willing to talk about it. And so that's where the book idea comes from, is like, how do we bring the reality of who we are, the real parts of who we are that are broken, that are messed up, that are grieving, that are mourning, that aren't going to tolerate racial injustice. How do we bring that to the God that cares about it? And how does the church catch up with that? Because the church is always going to have these conversations, but God is always down for it.
And that's one thing that I like, because the thing is with me, I think what I look at from a whole perspective is everyone knows the story about what happened. So I think the paradigm is they need to change their story. And we're looking at social injustice and things like that, but the people, and I won't call anybody particular, they need to change that story because they invoked it on other people. So oppression is real, and the racial reconciliation and all that, it's real. But understanding that in that, whoever started needs to change it. We can assist in the process, but if you start something, you need to finish it. And meaning that you need to delete whatever has been put in place that you want, whether that's power, whether that's hope, whether that's whatever, and you know that it has a negative connotation, it needs to be definitely deleted.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to start with some questions, because I know some of our listeners have questions. Your grandpa said, hello.
What up, Pops?
James said hello.
What up, Pops?
But we're going to ask you a question. When did you first realize you wanted to become a writer?
Man, I was in the 3rd grade.
Oh wow.
4th grade, and there was this like poetry curriculum we did when I was 8, 9 years old, and I wrote some poems, and every kid writes in that. But I kind of took it serious because I was writing these poems, and that same year, 8 Mile had come out. And so I'm like freestyle battling with my cousins like everybody else, thinking I'm going to be a rapper one day. And then when I'm in school, I'm writing poems, and I'm like, I'm going to put some 8 Mile stuff in my poems.
Right.
But it was always fun, man. I've been writing like rap stuff since I was a kid, finding there's like a genre of music that speaks to me and that, it moves me, and then having an opportunity to do it as like a person that creates it. I remember being in 6th grade, 7th grade, doing hip hop battles in the field house before we go play football, like just crazy kid stuff. It's been a thing that I feel like I've had a knack for since I was a kid. I didn't know that it was something God could use until I was in college, and started sharing with some friends and different open mic nights in college and stuff like that, and saw God really start to minister through it. And so God took like a childhood hobby and made a ministry out of it, which was being thought he was going to do with it, but it's been a huge blessing.
Yes, and in that blessing, I'm very thankful to have heard some of your poetry during your wedding. You're on YouTube with over 1 million viewers. To be present in some of your engagements that you've been in. You came to Maryland too and did something. So I remember a lot of things.
Yeah. So a lot of folks be up on podcasts, they about the wedding. And this is the first conversation I've been in with someone that was actually in the room. Like, damn, oh, you put that together.
Yes, I'm the wedding coordinator for the wedding. Yeah. So and it was a privilege, and I'm still the humble servant, and I still don't want anybody to like book me because I did such a great wedding for you guys. But that was something that I gave to you guys in order to, because it was just so, you were young, you were fruitful, and why not give you a blessing of being your wedding coordinator? So I thought that was just a beautiful event. Putting it together was like a seamless approach, and I just enjoyed the whole process. And you guys made it out of like the perfect wedding you want to have in a little small country church. So that was like totally on point.
Come on, shout out to Morning Star.
So I want to do another question. What would you say is your interesting writing quirk?
Interesting writing quirk. I got two. Okay. First, it's weird. Whenever I'm memorizing my poems, I have to say them out loud. And so I'll record myself, like, I'm saying, I'll record my poems in my phone memos, and I'll play back in the car like I'm listening to music. Like, so I'll be driving around, and if I have a poem to memorize, I'll have it like playing in my speakers. So that's one weird thing. That's kind of like, I'll be driving, listen to my own voice. That sounds awkward. But it's how I memorize them. Second one, as far as on the writing tip, I write in worship. So like, I don't sing all the time in worship. Like sometimes I have my phone out and I'm writing. Because for me, like writing is like, a part of it is a ministry, like stuff I go and share with people, but other parts of it is just a place that, I journal or I meet with God, or, if when the whole pandemic hit, I actually wrote the bulk of the book in worship. Like I was going to church on Wednesdays, and because we couldn't do in-person worship, we did these virtual, prayer nights. And I would be in there praying and worshiping. And instead of singing, I would just be jotting down like what my heart was wrestling with. And so a lot of the book came from a place of worship. So instead of like singing in worship sometimes, like a lot of times that's where I write my stuff.
I love it. So you're saying that you do a lot of worship, and when you write. And so this is the vulnerable, very vulnerable question. What is the first book that made you cry?
First book that made me cry.
Yes.
The first book that made me cry, this has nothing to do with poetry at all. It's a book called Maximum Ride. It's a fiction about these kids that get their bodies experimented on, and they have like angel wings. And the whole idea of the book, it's like a teenage angst coming of age kind of story. Mm-hmm. And this girl, Max, is trying to like save her family or whatever. Somebody in her family dies, and it broke me. I was like a ninth grade, 10th grade kid reading this on the way to school, like come to school sobbing, crying. Had nothing to do with poetry at all, but it was just like,
Right. So, I mean, in that, I said it was a very vulnerable moment, being that if you could tell your younger self, because I know I heard you say that you started writing in the 3rd grade. If you could tell your younger self, your younger writing self, something that your older self right now know, what would that be?
Specifically about writing, or about like faith, or about like just on the writing?
It could be general, if it's writing, faith, or whatever.
I think I would tell myself that Jesus loves me not because of what I do for him, but just, I think I went through a phase of thinking that my faith was somehow, an experiment in trying to get God to approve of me or get God to love me, as opposed to knowing that God loves me, and because he loves me, I then, flesh out my identity in light of that. So it's not become good enough to be loved. It's your love, so now go be good. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That didn't click for me until really, right around the time I started doing like, I guess, vocational ministry. But even then, it kind of took a turn, right? Because, we had a wedding, and then the whole video thing happened, and people started reaching out to me. And I thought, I have to say yes to every engagement. I have to say yes to every ministry opportunity to show that I'm good enough. You know what I mean? Like to show I have a gift or a calling or whatever. And if I flesh that out, that's how I get love from God. As opposed to being like, nah, man, like you loved already. Like you ain't gotta do all that. And I'm learning that. Like I think I know it, but I'm learning it more. I'm loved more than I can perform. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm good. Yeah.
I love it. Loving your love more. And I think sometimes we forget just how loved we are. Because we feel that we should have more. And being that that's happening, that we miss out on some of the love that we are supposed to be receiving.
Come on.
So one thing I wanted to ask is, what does literary success, being that you are an author now, what does literary success look like to you?
Honestly, so I'm again trying to put my life on a different, gauging success on a different metric system, right?
Yes.
Oldie would say the book got to pop. Like if the book goes crazy numbers, Pulitzer prizes,
and it will. It will. I've already said it.
Look, here's the thing. Like the old me would say it has to do that or else it wasn't worth doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus saying like, what I've written is so true to me. And it's so true to the experience that I've had with God. It's so true to what I hear in my community that if I can put this in the hands of people and it creates conversation, it creates empathy, it makes us actually love our neighbor like Jesus tells us to love our neighbor. It makes folks wrestle. Like if I can take this honest part of my journey with God and offer it to people as, an act of ministry, I'm cool. Like I'm legit cool. So like I need few results that look like numbers. I need dialogue to come from this. I need people to start having conversations with folks that look differently than them and vote differently than them. You know what I'm saying? Like if that happens, it's a win. It's a huge win.
And that's one thing that here at the Rise Creating Your Voice, this is what our conversations is about, which I know this is aligned in that conversation, being that we need to understand what is humankind. what does humankind look like to everyone, and making sure that we are loving your neighbors as yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that that's just the African American community.
Sure. That's the missing about the whole parable, right? Jesus,
yes,
he said that story about the Samaritan. Like, the Samaritans are Gentiles. Like, that's not a neighbor that they would have wanted to hear about. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I know what it looks like to, you know what I'm saying, occupy all Black spaces versus occupy white spaces or all Hispanic spaces. I know that there's a difference in those communities, but no matter which community I'm in, I got neighbors there. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's ignorant if we say, oh, we don't see color, we don't see race. I see color. I
we
see
all
race.
see it.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. But just because if I say I don't see it, that means I don't believe I can see color and neighboring in the same way.
Right.
That's symptomatic of you got some hard stuff you need to work on. Versus saying, no, it's different communities, it's different cultures, but God has given me brothers and sisters in those communities and in those cultures all the same.
Exactly. And I like how you reach out to it, because the thing is, even going further, I have, Italian communities. I have different communities. I have Chinese communities. I have Asian communities. I have different communities that I have been in where I have brothers and sisters of all diversity and including the whole population. And guess what? They call me brother. They will text me and say, brother. These are Asian people. These are Italian people. These are Jews. These are Mexicans. They call me brother. Yeah. So we have to become more diverse and step outside of that small little box that we're in. At least lift the lid open just a little bit. Pull that tape off. You still have your moving box in place. Take the tape off and unleash some of that moving equipment so you can move around to be unmovable.
Look at you with the analogy. Are you who the poet? Who's the poet? Me or you? With the metaphor.
You the one. You the one. My book coming up. No,
Plug it. You're right, though. You're
right. And it's hard. You're right. It can be easy, but some people just don't have the desire.
Yeah. Well, or I would say this. I think people, they assume they already know, right? Oh. Like I even myself, right? When we moved to Oxford, I was working at a church with one of my homies. Like, his name is David Viciolo. He's Italian. And David's the homie. It never dawned on me that white people ain't just like one ethnicity. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, white is a race. Yeah. But and Polish or German, those are ethnicities. You know what I'm saying? Yes. For me, like, actually doing life with dude, I realized, he's not like every other white person I've known before. Like, I assumed one white person is like every white person. But when you actually start getting to know people and they become your neighbor and you do life with them, all the assumptions about what you thought was true about these people, you find out ain't true. It's a lot of folks that think that Black is a monolith, like one version of Black. And you got to die to those assumptions. And when you lift that lid up and you actually start doing life with people, you realize it's a lot deeper than you thought. It's a lot more variables than you thought.
And we have a question. If you can't answer it, this is a question for you. Do your spiritual self feel the same in different nationalities?
Say that again.
Do your spiritual self feel the same in different nationalities?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll say this: my spiritual self may, my cultural self doesn't. So like, I like almost in like spheres, right? Like, I have my artist sphere, I have my, my Christian sphere, I have my, my racial sphere. So I have like, all these different things, but I'm a whole person. You know what I'm saying? Right. And what you would call, your Christian sphere, your Christian circle, that's a theological, grouping. That's a religious grouping. Mm-hmm. If you call your, like artistic community, folks that vibe with poetry or music or know me on that tip, like that's a whole like social experience. But I'm a holistic person. Right. You know what I'm saying? And that whole of a person, that's what it means to be like a spiritual self. What's really crazy is when you start looking at like scripture, like the way that scripture views people, like in a Christian way of looking at things, the word for soul in Hebrew language is nefesh. And it's like throat, you know what I'm saying? It's like the whole of you. And so my I couldn't separate what goes into me by saying, okay, well, the beef goes in this hole and the chicken goes in this hole. It's like, no, it all goes to the same. So whether I'm, in a Christian environment, I may not use church language around a non-Christian environment because I couldn't connect that. In my Arctic, more like Black environments, there are certain like cultural things that don't always fit the context. So it's like, I'll leave those conversations elsewhere. But the whole of me, like my spirituality, how God's son, the kind of person he informs me to be as far as how I flesh that out. Paul says it this way. He's like, to people, like for the sake of Christ, I become all things, I'll be Gentile. You know what I'm saying? Like culturally,
that's me. You done stole my scripture.
Spiritually, the whole of myself is rooted in God. Rooted in who he says is true about me.
And that's so true. That's what's true with me, with myself, that we have to understand that Paul said, I got to become everything to lead them to Christ and make sure that they are getting the tools and resources to become Christians. Yeah. You have to become everything.
Yeah.
You have to be that Jew. You have to be that Gentile. You have to be that Samaritan. You have to be just genuine.
Yeah.
No one is higher than another one. But then again, if you align yourself, the Spirit will come and manifest. It's about an alignment. So I want to just definitely chime on to that. My spiritual self will always maintain my spiritual self. And I'm like you, Lo. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
If you're not whole within whatever, now guess what? You're still going to feel some type of way in different situations because that's just self. But when spiritual self manifests itself and it becomes holistic, it becomes where it manifests into nothing as far as nationalities or anything sees you, because guess what? Now God is using you through that spiritual self, and he don't see color like that. He sees souls.
Well, so here was why I just found this out, like kind of as I was writing the book, I was kind of just like researching how we kind of got where we got.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, a century ago, it's 2020. So like 1920s, if you came over here as an Irish person, you experienced a similar kind of oppression that Black people felt. You know what I'm saying? Like Irish Americans was not considered like white yet. You know what I'm saying? That race thing wasn't even a picture. If you were Asian, you experienced a different kind of oppression. Hispanic, you experienced a different kind of marginal. You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at it, there was a way in which people who were marginalized should have been together because they have a shared experience. But then they started saying, oh, well, at least you're not a Black person. And so a poor Irish person would be like, well, at least I ain't Black. You know what I'm saying? And so the whole idea of race, and at least how we think about it in America, is new, like 80 to 100 years old. You trying to tell me that the God of the universe, scripture that's been informed 2,000 years ago, is going to be limited to how we view race? Race is too young. Like race is too young of a concept to hinder God. You know what I'm saying? When I think about who I am as a person, as a follower of Jesus, my understanding about scripture has a cultural context. I grew up in a Black church. And so when I think about like freedom and deliverance, I think about Moses' story, but I also think about, like the Negro spirituals that we sing, or I don't feel no ways tired. Like that shapes how I understand the gospel. That's a culture informing my understanding, right? And what's cool about God is he uses that. The only way I start to devalue culture is if I think my culture is better than your culture. If God can speak through my culture, he can speak through yours. And so if I really care about God, that I should be willing to learn from your culture and learn from your experience and learn from your background, because you have something to teach me. I'm not the expert. You know what I'm saying? Like we think that we got it all figured out, as opposed to realizing God's bigger than just our understanding and just our cultural influence.
Totally agree. Well, I want to get back to your book, but I love this conversation we have. So I want to ask give me 3 examples or 3 educational tips that you can give the listeners that's out in our podcast world and that's right here, right now, about loving your neighbors. 3 tips.
Good. I would say 1, be present. Oh. There is a there is a huge disparity in our attention spans.
Yes, Lord.
And our ability to just listen to somebody, to just hear something out. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times when we talk, we're thinking about what's the next thing I can say, as opposed to really listening to what somebody has to say. You can't be a neighbor well if you only thinking about your agenda and your perspective. Be present. Like, that's the first thing I say. Fully be present. The second thing I say is be willing to let your neighbor be a neighbor to you. A lot of times we think about neighboring as like, oh, I'm gonna go be missional, I'm gonna help somebody, I'm gonna serve somebody. But then we show up like we got all the answers, we got it all figured out, and I won't let nobody help me. I won't let nobody bless me. I won't let nobody help me. I heard a story about a lady who was hiring somebody to come help clean the house, and she like cleaned the house before the lady got there to help clean the house because she had to make sure she looked together. She didn't want nobody to come in and see her junk. It's like, hey, if I'm gonna be a neighbor to you, by definition, that means I gotta let you neighbor to me too. And so quit acting like we got it all figured out, like we got it all together. Be jacked up, be messed up. God's holy, God's perfect. We ain't gotta pretend to be perfect. So be present, let somebody neighbor to you. And the last thing I would say is just be willing to have conversation. I think a lot of times we think that we have to like have a curriculum to do stuff. We gotta have like, man, Jesus ain't never had no curriculum. Like, he just showed up.
Never. You just went.
Yeah, you learn so much more in conversation than you do, and at least as far as neighboring goes, you learn more in conversation than you do with curriculum. So that's my 3 tips.
I have to give at least 2 out with that.
Go for it.
Get to know your neighbor.
Come on.
We don't take the opportunity even to get to know our neighbor. What do I mean by that? They don't always want chest pie or your favorite dessert. Get to know your neighbor. They might not want you always in their yard. Don't be a nosy neighbor. Don't go with a hidden agenda type of neighbor. That's what I'm saying. Get to know your neighbor.
Come on.
And most people don't do that. It's too many people want to know who's moving into the neighborhood. And you're going over there with your chest pie, pecan pie, your cakes, and all your thoughts of, oh, I want to see if they got some kids, so I want them to play with Shaniqua over here because I ain't got nobody in the neighborhood. See, you are going for the wrong agenda.
What is a chest pie?
I'm telling you, it's a chest pie. Look it up. But people do that. And then on another note is and loving your neighbor, stop competing with your neighbor.
That part.
They get a new car, you get a new car. They water their yard, you get a big water hose and water yours. Stop competing with them. It's not a competition. Yeah. Start loving them.
You know what? If people are competing with their neighbors, I feel like, you can tell me what you think, but I feel like that's not a sign of, you know what I'm saying, something's wrong with the neighbor. That's a sign of something going on in your own heart. You know what I'm saying? Like where you feel like, oh, they got it, I gotta have it. It's like if you're content, you know, with you, it don't matter what they got. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not content with you, I think that's something that God can give you, but your neighbor can't. Competition with your neighbor is not gonna bring that kind of contentment.
And knowing you can't, you know, afford it, but you get it. So
that part.
So my other question is, what motivation could you give someone that is willing to publish and or write?
I would say write something that you want to write, not something that people would read. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I told my wife about 2 years ago, my wife and my homeboy Kenny, that I was gonna write a book. And they was like, you know, it's my community's encouraging me, like, yeah, go for it, do what you gotta do, whatever. And I spent, you know what I'm saying, 2 years thinking of you know, what do people want to read? You know, what are people in their hands? You know what I'm saying? As opposed to this, like, and it took me a long time. Like, I don't really deal with writer's block too often, but I could not like really passionately put pen to paper on what I thought people wanted to hear, as opposed to, you know what I'm saying, this experience, I was just writing from what was real to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was where I felt like God was dealing with me. And so as opposed to trying to write what you think the world wants to hear, it's whole marketing teams trying to figure out what the world wants. Can't nobody write what's inside of you except you. You know what I'm saying? So
that's it.
If that's already in your heart, don't worry about what crowd's going to gravitate towards it. Write what's really in your heart because God put it there, you know? And then from that point, like, you know, find the right publicist, find people that believe in what you're saying, find a community that wants to embrace, you know, your art and what you put hard work into. But it has to start with you believing in what you have to say before anybody else is going to believe in what you have to say. So write what's real to you is the most encouraging thing I could ever say to anybody.
And that's smart. Is definitely write what's in your heart, and also have a passion to write. You have to have the desire to want to write. If you know you're not a good writer, you can hire a ghostwriter. But then again, make sure that you put yourself in it and not that person that's writing for you. Ensure that you read the material. Ensure you read all the chapters and things to make sure that it is definitely identifying what you want out here in this world. So I want to go back to the topic of loving your neighbors, because I think this is a great topic that a lot of people miss, and they love themselves too much over their neighbors. So I want to expound on that with we do understand that we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves. What does that look like to Lo, in your opinion?
Well, so I'm learning myself, right? Like, I feel like these last few years, whether it's been marriage, whether it's been, you know, vocation, ministry, artistry, being a parent, like I'm becoming a person. You know what I'm saying? Like, the person I am right now is not the person I was, you know, when I was saying yes at the altar. Like, I would be a terrible husband if I was still that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm growing. I'm becoming a person.
Right.
And so because I'm growing, and even my understanding of myself, I have to understand and learn and spend time knowing who the heck I am before I can get some loose statement like I love who I am. And if I'm not willing to do the work of actually discovering myself and loving that self and believing what God says is true about that self over what culture says is true about me or what I want to be true about me, like, I have to learn that. That same thing is true for how I love my neighbor. I cannot just assume I know everything about my neighbor. I have to be willing to learn them. I have to be willing to accept that as I meet a person, prayerfully, that person is still growing and becoming who God is calling them to be.
Right.
I've had this happen before where I've had a conversation with somebody and, you know, we do life together, circle back around and we're like, oh, you changed on me. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, like I should be growing. Like growth is change. And so never wanting to like try to put somebody in a box and say, oh, you are only this person, or you're limited by my experiences with you. I think loving my neighbor as I love myself means discovering that person who you're doing life with is genuinely loved by God. Even if you don't agree with them, they love by God. You know what I'm saying? And even if you don't believe that they are where they're supposed to be, it's God who orders their steps. Like, God is walking with them. And so learning to like let my hands go. I was having a conversation with my big homie on Friday. He was talking about how, like, you know, we're not called to be umpires, you know, where we're calling all the balls and calling all the strikes and judging where everybody else. Like, we're called to swing. We're called to pitch, you know. As I'm playing the game, as I'm doing life alongside you, I'm a teammate. I'm not your umpire. I'm not your coach or your referee. Right. I think loving my neighbor means I got to stop trying to be a referee and just play alongside you, you know, walk alongside you in this game. So, yeah, I'm learning as I'm discovering myself, as I'm discovering what God's grace means to be true in my life. I'm learning to let that be true for other people as well. I'm tired of playing referee with people. Other than that, though, I would say, you know, on the other side of it, I think I'm learning to let people be shaped by God and trust that God will use me as he sees fit, as he's shaping me he'll use me in that. So yeah, learning to let folks be, and pray for them, like genuine. That's like, don't do that whole weird bad mouth. I'm gonna pray for you. Like, you're really trying to say you think they need to get their life together by saying I'm gonna pray for you. Like, nah, actually pray for them. But then too, like, you know what I'm saying, like, learn to do life alongside folks and stop trying to be a reference.
And that's one thing is, one of our listeners said growth is changing. That's one thing I want to elaborate on. If you are not changing and you still want to stay where you are, and growth is change for everyone. I want everyone to hear this, regardless of whether you're 75, 85, 99, 103, you should still be growing.
Yeah.
You should still be growing. I'm going to say that real slowly for those listeners that could not hear. If you're still in the same spot that you were in just a couple of weeks ago, guess what? You're not growing. You should always try to find a way of growth or a new way of change so you do not become redundant and complacent in your mess. I'm going to say that slowly. If you're doing the same thing that you did last week or 2 weeks ago, right now, that you need to look at some type of growth or change so you do not become complacent in your mess and your situation.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I want to keep emphasizing that because basically, every day I'm growing. When I wake up, I'm growing. Because what I'm saying to God and my provider is, it's something new I can do today. If it's just change my routine, that's growth.
Now give some more clarity, because I feel like that's important, right? Give some more clarity, because sometimes
change my routine. Here's my growth. If I know I get up every day and I do the same thing, I brush my teeth. I go to the counter and fix my breakfast. I go into my computer. That's my same day routine. It's not gonna keep working for me. You have to change it up. Say, for instance, I miss out on breakfast and change that to another hour. Do a little workout for 30 minutes, which is growth because now my body is growing. Drink more water, put some more water in there instead of eating breakfast that early. That's growth. We have to change our activities because guess what? Once you become complacent, you won't see anything changing. That's why your weight doesn't change. That's why your mind doesn't change. Nothing changes. Yeah. And you're still stuck in your negative.
But I think there's a difference, and it's worth clarifying, right? There's a difference between being complacent and being faithful, right?
Because of course.
You know what I'm saying? You can be doing the right thing consistently, and so many things will tell you to give up on it. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people are so quick to the next big thing that they don't see something through the completion. You know what I'm saying? But that doesn't mean you have to do the same thing over and over again. But how do you have the same direction? Like, if God called me to this thing, I may change what I do on my day to day, but I'm going the same direction. Like, if he called me to follow and said, come this way, like my sheep know my voice, a stranger they will not follow. Like, I'm going in his direction. Then that means I'm being faithful to the direction. I may change my approach, but I'm faithful to the direction.
But let us understand this, because guess what? We need to understand if God is calling us to do a certain thing, God gives specific directions. Just like he told the man, go to the right and you will see somebody holding a silver cup. Then you go up to the upper room to the chambermaid and you will greet him. Those are specific directions.
I don't know. Sometimes he don't be that specific. Like he told Abram, he was like, hey, your family out east, I want you to go west where I'm going to show you. He ain't say where. He just said go.
But he still went west. That's specific.
All right.
He didn't go north, did he?
Well, and the reason I think about that is, like, as far as like being faithful. So the matriarch of my family right now, my Aunt Doris, is She's 97 years old. She just went to the doctor for the first time in her life since being born. Like, check that. Healthy. Her mind is sharp. Like Aunt Doris is she's so present. She's so wise, and her body like leaving here. She's like Aunt Doris the fox. Like she about it. Aunt Doris was just on our family. We had a family reunion on virtual, whatever, and she was talking on there about like how, you know, she went to the doctor and all the doctors was like, how are you so healthy? You know what I'm saying? Since she's been, you know, alive, they've come out with a million different new diets, a million different new exercises and workout plans. None of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so sometimes it's not about jumping on the next new thing.
Exactly.
Sometimes faithful in a direction. Like, I'm gonna take care of my body. I'm gonna take care of my mind. She played a little, you know what I'm saying, word game every morning. Like, you know, her mind is sharp. Like, I think sometimes we got to learn. It's a balance, right? When do I make sure I'm not being complacent versus when am I being faithful to a thing? I'm writing this book, and there's many times I was like, man, ain't nobody trying to hear this. I'm gonna give up on it. But instead, it's like, nah, I'm gonna see it through and trust that God's gonna do with it what He wants to do with it. But I'm not gonna be the one to stop. You know, it may be a different poem this day. You know, I may just focus on reading or just focus on praying this day. But I'm gonna see the project through to completion. I think we got to learn how to be faithful and balance that, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to being complacent.
But I understand what you're saying too. But in that, I'm saying, you know, some people just couch potatoes and knots on the log and things like that too as well. And that's what I'm talking about, complacent, where they don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
So that's the complacent I was definitely speaking about.
I got you.
So I'm thankful for your Aunt Doris, 97. Hey. Keep living, and I think that's one thing that my cousin, I can't even remember her name, but she Ephira, no, what's her name? I can't remember, but she taught me. She said, whatever you do, keep reading, keep studying, keep your brain going.
That's good.
Don't give up on your brain.
That's good.
Because guess what? If you keep the memory and all that stuff going, it keeps it alive.
Come on.
Once you stop training, guess what? Your brain is like dead weight. You're going to lose, and that's why people have different diseases of the brain, because they forget. They forget what the things that they were so used to doing.
Yeah. It's like a muscle. You got to work that out.
Yes. Yep, Daddy got it. Miss Elvina Wilson. I was like, I couldn't think of her name and save my life. She was sharp as a tack. Oh my gosh, she was really sharp. So I'm definitely giving homage to her. And you know, she passed away, but that's one woman who told me to keep learning, keep going. And she was actually in like rehabilitation during that time, and she was still smart as a whip. So what are some of the avenues, Lo, they can look you up on? I know you're on Instagram at Lo the Poet, and also we sang a dirge, all one word.com. They can purchase your book there.
Sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, and again, like for me, dialogue is huge. So, you know what I'm saying? If you read the book and you want to talk, like you can hit me up, you know what I'm saying? My email, lothepoet@gmail.com.
Just have them to come on the podcast and we'll talk live.
Jump on it. Now, but for real though, like, yeah, I'm trying to be as present as I can. You know what I'm saying? As far as respecting family time and everything. But like, I'm so here for the conversation. So any place, you know what I'm saying? Lo the Poet, whether that's on Facebook or if you want to go straight to Lo Alaman on Facebook, or you know, Instagram is Lo the Poet. I'm thinking about getting to Twitter. I don't know. I'm playing with the idea of it. I know. But yeah, like that's where I'm at, and the book is Amazon, or you know, we sang a dirge.com. Like, grab that gent. Let's talk about it.
We sang a dirge. Do we have any other questions out there for our listeners? While Mr. Lo is here, he is a poet. He's an author. For those who have just come on, his book is We Sang a Dirge. It's poems, laments, and other things that matter to God. I mean, it's just wonderful that we have. If you can, I don't know if your publicist will let you say this, but you know what I always like to ask authors and poets, what's your next project?
Yeah, no, I'm currently working on another book right now.
Okay.
And the idea will be the same thing, just like taking, poetry and literary art and using it as a worshipful expression, but also as a discipling expression. How are we using this art to help us see Jesus in the fullness of who he is? And in scripture, you have a lot of folks look at the Bible as, this rule book that came down from heaven. And until you read it, and when you read it, you're like, oh, snap, this is 45% narrative, 33% poetry. 5% of it is like, or 20% of it is actually like letters and relational documents written to friends. So it's like discourse. So you have, it's not a rule book, but God invites us to story and to art and to relational writing. You know what I'm saying? And so
Right.
I'm lean into that and just, write more creatively. That helps the church learn how to, honor God with our language and with our art, but also meet the lost where they actually are.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that book, but in ending, I want people to know that the Rise Creating Your Voice does send out text messages, motivational text messages, free motivational text messages every Wednesday. You text The Rise, all one word in all caps, to 844-452-4110. That's The Rise to 844-452-4110. We also do Fitness Fridays every third Friday of the month. The time varies. That's with Tavon Fitness, where I'm working out and trying to just get people to move. That's called Judah Moves. So whatever you want to do, if you want to come and work out, lift your legs up, or whatever you want to do to move, even in this pandemic, we want you to be able just to move, because no one is moving in this pandemic. And I've had a lot of friends who told me that they put on a lot of weight and things like that too as well. So we're just trying to give an avenue where people are moving. Once again, we have Lo Alaman on here. He is on Instagram, Lo the Poet, and I'm going to spell that for you. L is in love, O is in other, T is in Tom, H is in Heather, E is in Everett, P is in poet, O is in other, E is in Everett, and T is in Tom. And we want to just, give out good energy to our people to make sure that, we're treating people human and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And what does that mean to you personally? Because we have to understand that we all have personal relationships with God. What is your personal relationship? And for those who have not listened to the other seasons, like Lo said, that he was trying to find himself and trying to see who he was. What can we do? What you can do, Lo, is listen to my season 1, episode 1, when I'm talking about defining you and practicing self-discipline. It gives you an outline. My whole season was about who are you? Who are you? Who are you in God? Who are you in God in your driven purpose? And that's one thing that I had to do, so I know it works. I had to remove all of that crud and behavior and all of that other stuff that people taught me. And the behaviors that I learned from other people, not only just in the streets, in churches, in other things. It was a lot of stuff that I was just confused about.
Wow.
But I had to shed that off. It was just like shedding off old skin. It was shedding off. You had to shed it off and become who God has driven you in your purpose. Because the thing is, we start mimicking and start doing other things that we saw and the behaviors that we learned, and it's not us. It's people that we learned it from. And we think that it became right, but it does not work in that new season of you becoming and growing who you are. So continuing your growth, and I bless you in your growth, and I declare and decree in your growth that everything is going to be okay. But I also want to give a shout out and say, Erica Campbell of Mary, if you're listening, this is Judah Bernard. Go ahead, because you put him on blast with the wedding video. So make sure that you put him on blast for this too as well. So
Got
they
that.
want to know, how can we get a signed copy of the book?
Yo, so I'm trying to do a virtual book signing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to plan out when's the wisest time to do that. Here's what I'm thinking. Y'all let me know in the comments if you think it's a good idea or not. I'm thinking if you bought a book, right? You bought a book, you've read it, and you're like, yo, I like this book. I think it would be a good gift for somebody else. What you're going to do is, you know what I'm saying, you're going to reach out on this little platform I have set up and be like, hey, I'm giving my copy away. And if you give your copy away, if you bless somebody with the book and you purchase a different book, I'm going to sign that book and send that junk to you. And so we'll have like a book sign. And when we do it, it'll kind of be like this, to where, you know, as I'm signing the books, I'll have some different friends that kind of come on and talk about their experience with the book. If you've already read the book, to kind of talk about what your favorite poems were, what lines caught your attention, what did you struggle with, what blessed you, what was hard for you. So yeah, I'm thinking about having a whole shebang with that. And so if you think it's a good idea, let me know. I'll pursue it. Elsewise, I'll just sign you a copy and mail it to you.
What I say is, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and bless it right now, because guess what? I already have the Zoom account set up. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and do it. The Zoom account is set up. Let's do it. It's here. Let's do it. So that I'm your accountability partner. We're going to do it.
Virtual book signing. It's going to be live.
Virtual book signing. So as you hear, and what we'll do is possibly do like a cash app or something. I don't know how you want to do it, or handle the money or whatever. And that way, with the cash app, they can put in their address or whatever and send a DM or whatever. And so you can sign the book and then send it off. And you have to pay for shipping and handling, people, if you're going to do that. I'm just saying.
I just found out that I think it's UPS has like this real cool, like if you're an artist, like a published artist, author. Apparently I am now. It's kind of crazy. They have this thing where like they'll ship your stuff out at a discounted rate because they know you're going to ship a bunch of books. So it shouldn't be too expensive. But I got to work with the publishers about that to see how that's going to vibe. But I think it'll be pretty.
Hey, let's just do it. I mean, it's Zoom, so and if you want to go Facebook Live, it's all on you. Hey, let's just set up some dates and get people out there, you know, purchase the book, read it, and give them some time to read it or whatever, or some things that stood out to them. So we'll definitely do it. So as you all know, your grandmother also said, hi, great job, both of you. Grandma Jolene Sim said, hi, great job, both of you. He said, thank you. So we just want to thank you guys for joining in and tuning in on this podcast, The Rise CYV Your Voice. Understand that we have podcasts every Sunday. Sometimes we have special guests such as Lo Alaman. I will definitely be doing season 10, which is an overview of all of the episodes sometime coming up this week. That will be on Facebook Live and on Instagram Live. And I'm just going to leave it on there. And so everybody will know what the episode is about, and also give you announcements for 2021 too as well. As I always leave here, I always like to leave my hashtag and my tagline. That's tell a friend, tell a foe, tell your spouse, heck, tell everyone. We'll see you on the next podcast, The Rise Creating Your Voice. Goodbye, and thank you, Alaman.
These friends. Love you, family.
Love.